We're about news, commentary, conversations, truth, liberty, and God. We stand for American values and our flag. We believe that the Constitution is a document that fortifies rights already given to us by our Creator. We will not apologize for our love of God and country, ever. We are Right America Media.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a Tuesday night edition, because every edition of Granite State Live is on a Tuesday. It's just a different Tuesday out there. A rain-soaked... My God, am I sick and tired of rain. This 14th or 15th weekend in a row that we've had rain. So let's talk about all the wonderful things about New Hampshire. No cell service, rain, and ticks.
I'm so over the rain. It's like every time I want to get out in my yard and get some stuff done, some landscaping done, I just can't get it done. Everything sprouts up 6 inches every weekend, and then it's like, here comes Monday, and I'm like, and it's all still wet. And it's
Yeah.
Either that or I'm so busy I just can't get to it.
Well, busy's not a bad thing, and we are busy here at Granite State Live, the 17th day of June, 2025. Great to have you along. I am your host, Keith Hansen, the unapologetic contrarian conservative, never apologizing for my toxic white masculinity. Can't help it, kids. I was born this way. Never apologizing for my Christian faith.
Hello, and I'm your co-host, Julian, blue-collar intellectual, author, and stoic jerk asshole. Call it what it is. I'm here to dismantle the political narratives you hear on both sides of the aisle and give you that real solutionary vibe.
833-603-8255 if you'd like to be a part of tonight's program. Make that nice and easy for you. Everything is up and running and functional according to the trusted word of our esteemed producer, Mr. Juan. So he assures me that I can assure you that if you call in, you're going to get through. 833-603-8255. Got a great show coming up for you here. Let's see. In terms of guests tonight, 7:30, we're going to be checking in with Teddy Pierce. He's the author of Dethrone Davos, Saving America. He's a writer, speaker, political commentator, and we're going to be talking about the riots that were going on. Not here in New Hampshire, because evidently rioting is just too tiresome for the 60-something plus retired teacher crowd that seems to have populated the majority of the No Kings activities this weekend. But we'll have some fun dissecting that as well. And then coming up at 8 o'clock, we're going to be joined by Michael O'Neill. He is the Vice President of Legal Affairs and serves as Assistant General Counsel at the Barbara K. Olson Legal Counsel. Is that correct? Am I reading this right? Because it's not telling me where he's from. We're going to be talking about executive orders against the courts, and this is something that I think a lot of people have noticed, that nothing is getting done in Washington, at least from a legislative standpoint, because we have opened a dangerous can of worms, the Pandora's box, if you will. And you think lawfare was bad during the Biden administration. I think we're going to see it getting a lot worse. And, there is a mandate that was put forth by the American people, which, by the way, I have to say, yesterday was the 10th year anniversary of Donald Trump descending the escalator. at Trump Tower. 10 years.
It's nostalgic, and yet at the same time, it doesn't feel like it's been that long.
I know, it's crazy. No.
It's been such a chaotic 10 years that it feels like it's just going like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, it was interesting because there were a couple of media outlets yesterday that had replayed the media's incredulity. Is this some type of stunt? Donald Trump, the reality TV show host, is running for president. And then, of course, the best thing is watching Rachel Maddow trying to make sense of it all. And, watching Rachel Maddow trying to make sense of anything is moderately entertaining, to say the least. But just the incredulity that these people expressed because Trump, and he'll never win. He'll never win. And I know she's disappeared from the radar, but Ann Coulter, I remember when somebody had asked, well, who do you think is going to be the nominee? And Ann Coulter said, just emphatically, Donald Trump. Yep. And everybody on that panel laughed at her. There's not a snowball's chance in hell that Donald Trump is ever going to win the nomination, let alone become president of the United States. And lo and behold, here we are in term 2.
But you know what? The reason why all of them have this idea that, no, America would never choose these guys is because everybody within their sphere of the D.C. Beltway couldn't understand the idea of an outsider, a true outsider to the system, somebody who had nothing but criticism for their system and their group of people and all their theories. You know, the constant, we're going to try the same thing over and over again, throw shit at the wall and see what sticks. You know, it was that mindset that we're above you and you should deal with whoever we put up and we ordain as the king's candidate. And what I found interesting is, remember, during that election cycle, everybody was an acceptable Republican except for Donald Trump. And we had just went through cycle after cycle after cycle of, and I was in a space talking about this with Democrat strategists, and they're like, we still don't understand how we lose. I go, you know why? Because you keep trying to crown people artificially. In America, thanks to the decentralized media landscape we live in today, podcasts like this, podcasts like Tim Pool, PBD, Joe Rogan, all that stuff, you've gotten to the point where you are so far out of touch with the average person in America, you don't understand. We caught on your game. We peeped your game, and we don't like it anymore. You're not going to spend the entire primary season ordaining the acceptable Republican. And then we go, okay, we'll give you your acceptable Republican. And then the exact same complaints you had against the unacceptable Republicans, you now are lobbing at the quote-unquote acceptable Republican. What was it? It was, you're racist, you're a Christian nationalist, you're anti-Semitic, you're a Nazi, you're all this stuff. And then as soon as McCain was the nominee, all of a sudden, McCain became a neo-Nazi and a warmonger and a racist. When it was Mitt Romney, same thing. And when it was George Bush, same thing. And now it's gotten to the point where we're just like, you know what, fine. You don't like any of our guys. The only guy that you say isn't acceptable is this guy over here saying that none of you work for us and you're all a part of the same club. And not only, what was it? It was Dave Chappelle goes, you know what? He's the realest nigga in the country, Donald Trump. He flat out stood up there and he told you it's broken. And you know how it's broken? Because I use it. Because I'm a part of it. I've used it. I've bought these people. I've had to sit in these meetings. I know they're screwing you because I've watched them do it. And everyone goes, shit, I like that guy. Screw all the rest of these guys who are willing to play along and, talk nice and hold hands and go to cigar smoke-filled back rooms. I like that guy.
Well, because people want real. And as you're talking about this process of anointing, all I can think of is the Chuck Moses versus the Kelly Ayotte and who is in favor. And, basically the dry run that Chris Sununu gave Chuck with the governor's race. I mean, that was supposed to be a torch that was Chuck Morris. I'm sorry, not Chuck Moses. Chuck Morris. That was a torch that was supposed to be passed to Chuck. And just what a nasty. And this is one of the reasons why, again, we talk news, we talk events, we talk current, all this. But I got to be honest with you. I just despise them all. I mean, not personally. I mean, some of these people are good people. Some of them are scumbags. Some people I would break bread with. Others I would never want to be seen at the same table with.
I've had private conversations.
The bottom
with
line
Chuck.
is I'm
He's a great
tired.
guy.
I'm tired. Yeah, I mean, but it's just the whole. It's just the whole. It's what I've always described it as. It's an incestuous snake pit. Politics, especially state level politics, is an incestuous snake pit. It's the same people over and over and over again. And it's these people that, for whatever reason, they want politics to be a career, and they want people looking up to them. And I think ultimately what it boils down to, we talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, especially the higher level of Maslow. Some people become social justice warriors. Why? Because they're addicted to the drug of rage, they're addicted to the adrenaline that they get, and they're addicted to all of the other feel-good drugs that the brain releases when, they're out there championing causes for people, and I'm out there, righting wrongs, and there's my dopamine rush because I'm out there doing something. And then you have other people that I think self-actualize because they think that, I don't know, maybe it's that they think they're better than other people. I can't imagine that there isn't some type of narcissistic air of superiority to people who want to get into politics. I mean, I've had conversations. This is one of the first questions after Byron Donalds got into Congress, and I remember asking him because down in South Florida, we had watched Trey Radel, who was the who had initially beaten Byron. And Trey Radel, he was a local 92.5 Fox News was the local morning show. I did a morning show down there that was in direct competition with Trey and 92.5. So he and I were caught. We would talk to each other all the time. We were at many Patriot events. This is of course during the Obama years, the first Obama term. So we were at a lot of different events together. We would have conversations quite frequently, and he was, self-professed. I'll say both self-professed and ostensibly, this staunch conservative, and he talked the great game, and because he's hosting a morning drive talk show on Fox News, he's got to be able to talk the talk. And so he gets elected to Congress, and he is a congressman for, I don't know, maybe 2 months, no more than 3 months, and he gets popped by an undercover officer buying cocaine and his companion was an 18-year-old gay male prostitute. Whoops! So he comes back to, he takes a leave of absence, and he says, I'm going to check myself in. This was great. I'm going to check myself in voluntarily to alcohol rehab. And it's like, dude, you didn't get caught. You didn't get busted driving drunk. You didn't get arrested for a DUI. You got caught buying blow with an 18-year-old gay male prostitute. The problem is significantly greater than you taking a couple of swigs of Grandpa's old cough syrup before you get behind the wheel. Mm-hmm. So, eventually, and he did not want to step down, but he eventually he resigned, and then Byron winds up in that congressional seat.
I mean,
and so
we've seen though?
No, but we talk about it, and I'm like, what is it about politics that is absolutely corrupting? What is it? I mean, you've got somebody like this. Now, maybe that was who he was behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. But you have a lot of people who go into politics that I'm going to go in there and it's the Mr. Smith goes to Washington. I'm going to change the world. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be such a moral person. I'm going to be the guy that goes in there and I'm going to show everybody how it's done. And I am going to be the absolute pillar of morality. And I'm going to toe the ethical line. And then they get in there and then it's like, okay, so congratulations. The chameleon has changed colors. Mm-hmm. And I find it just really, for me, it's fake, it's disgusting. And you know what? Yeah, I'll do news about these people. I will sit down and I will have them on as a guest and I will talk to them about it. But I mean, bearing my soul for just a second here, I despise them. I really do.
So, you know what it is? There's this... Well, one, there's a competing ideology. So do you do all the things you ran on when you were talking to your base, all the things that they elected you in the primary to be their nominee for? Or do you represent your district? And if you're representing your district, regardless of how you feel about certain things, you have to put your feelings aside because you're representing the people in your district. If you're doing that faithfully, then it doesn't matter how you feel. Except when it comes to the Constitution, because even when you're representing your district, you shouldn't violate the Constitution or promote the violation of the Constitution, because that's not representing them faithfully, because you did take an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. However,
Democrats take an oath to uphold the Constitution, Julian. What the hell does that mean? What is this beyond just a mere formality that I have to go through in order to be able to now avail myself of all of the trappings that comes with?
Most people who take the oath haven't actually read it, which is the problem. That's the problem, is most people who've taken the oath haven't actually read it. And if you're a lawyer and you have read it, you've read it with the air of using it, manipulating it, using it as a weapon or a tool to get what you want, where you can malleably shape the words to fit whatever your goal is at any given point in time. But the problem is, when you go to DC, the first thing you do when you get to DC, you do your orientation, then they separate you into your groups, and they sit you down with the lobbyists, and they sit you and they go, all right, that's really nice that you ran on this, and this, but here's how things work here.
Yep.
And we're going to write you a big fat check, and you're going to hold this position, this position, this position, this position. And
kind of like the New Hampshire State Senators and the New Hampshire Auto Dealers Association, that kind of thing, like not having an opportunity to get rid of the absolute bullshit scheme that is vehicle inspection stickers. Why? Because the New Hampshire Auto Dealers Association and New Car and all of these other car dealer pimps are putting money into the campaign coffers of New Hampshire state senators. Oh, you mean like that?
And this is what we're dealing with. There's a whole bunch of different interests, and part of this is our problem is the people, right? We elect people, we expect them to immediately we retreat back into our lives, and we expect them to go there and be honest. But the reality is, who are the people who are showing up at your door to lobby you? It's the Democrats, or these NGOs, or these organizations, these private corporate organizations. They'll show up at your office. They'll donate money to your coffers. They'll make sure you get reelected. But the average person, we elect you and we expect you to faithfully execute the duties of your office, and then we retreat back into our lives, and we all of a sudden start paying attention again once we get to the end of the primary of the next upcoming election cycle, and we go, wait a minute, this isn't what I elected you to do. Why did you screw me? Why did you screw me? I elected you faithfully.
I just reading the comment here. By constitution, do you mean the written constitution or the oral constitution, meaning the constitution as interpreted by judges? No, we're talking about the written constitution, the actual written constitution as it was.
The written in the text as it was meant when it was written, which is the only proper way to read and interpret the Constitution, is as it was written, what the words meant at the time. Because if you're reading it in today's context, now you're looking at it through today's lens of what we use these words for. And you're looking at it through 250 frickin' years of misinterpretations and bastardizations in order to justify a numerous amount of things that are overtly on their face repugnant to the Constitution. And it's been I rail on all the time about how on the left, wokeism is their religion, right? And they're willing to subvert the Constitution and bastardize the text of the Constitution and misuse the welfare clause in order to justify a numerous amount of friggin' repugnant actions. But on the
wait, you mean the welfare clause? The welfare clause does the general welfare clause doesn't mean that single moms who weigh 500 pounds with 8 kids are entitled to get welfare to be able to support their cigarettes, vaping, a lottery ticket, and tattoo habits?
Hell no.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure because Ray, evidently I'm Ray Buckley, evidently 833-603-8255. I'm misinterpreting the Constitution. According to you, you pederast. So correct me if I'm wrong.
On the flip side of that, the Republican side of it, it's the evangelical Christians that want to weaponize government in order to force their social prescription for society. And I'm a big fan as a constitutionalist of understanding what the founding fathers meant when they referenced the role of the church in society to undergird the culture of society so that we would have a culture conducive to maintaining liberty. So I look at it going, if you want a Christian conservative society, I agree with you. Stop proselytizing safely inside of your four walls in front of people who all agree with you. They don't even do that in your freaking communities.
They don't even do that. How many?
No, now they raise pride flags and BLM flags out in front of at the Pentecost and it's.
No, they don't even do that. There's no preacher. They're afraid of losing their 501c3 status. They don't want to. They don't want to talk politics. They don't want to. Everybody is so afraid of ruffling somebody's feathers.
No, I mean, not even talking politics. I'm talking about if you have a problem with the homeless people who are shitting on the streets and they're using syringes and stuff in neighborhoods, then you know what? If you're the church, go out there. The church used to be the number one place to go to if you were homeless or if you had drug addiction or alcoholism or you were having marital issues. You didn't go to a psychologist. You went to the church. You talked to your priest. If you want to solve all these social issues in your community, the church needs to be active outside of the four walls of the church.
Well, and when you look at a lot of the denominations, I mean, not all of them. This is not a scathing indictment of every denomination, but one of the things that you'll definitely find, or you'll find the same people that will show up at the Rotary in Peterborough. You know, the 65-year-old, silver-haired, hyphenated last name, Subaru driving retired teachers, the awfuls, the angry white female liberals. These are the people that will.
That's what it was, Juan.
Angry white female liberals.
I couldn't figure it out earlier. It's angry white female liberals.
Oh, New Hampshire is just awash in awfuls. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. But these are the people that'll go to the Unitarian Church, and they'll go to the Unitarian Church because, well, religion can become what I say that it is.
No, it can't.
Gender and sex, there are two of them, XX, XY. And as much as you'd like to change biology, there are not 52 different genders. Just like religion and God and the Bible is a absolute finite. You don't get to determine, oh, well, you know, God says this and God says that. No, that's not how it works. See, but people think that, and this is the age, the dawn of humanism, where I am the highest entity. Human beings, I hate to say this, aren't even the apex predators. Go out into the Serengeti Plain, you'll figure that out real quick. Something will kill you or have you for lunch. So, but people want to change this. People are so ego-driven. And today's society, it's the same thing. It's social media. I want to be important. I want to be an influencer. I want to be this. You know, people ask me, what's your social media? I'm not on it. I'm on it, but I'm not on it. I don't use it. I don't get. The last time I logged into Facebook, don't care. Do I have a TikTok? I have a TikTok because my producer said get a TikTok. Am I on it? I can't tell you the last time I opened the damn thing because I don't care. I don't need other people validating me to feel that I have a sense of self-worth, that I have an impact in my community.
Well,
but you know, here's the but getting back to the
reasons.
But getting back to the thing, you're a friend of Scott Brown's. Why the hell is Scott Brown insisting that he's like a Republican? And I'll put that in air fingers quotes. He's a Republican. Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton feels as though elected office is her birthright, and she's not going to stop until she gets the next elected position. What is it with Scott Brown? Now we got Stephanie Shaheen throwing into the mix. What the hell qualifies you to be a senator? Well, you sat there at the kitchen table while you listened to your mother blather to your father about, oh, it's such an arduous task being a female senator in Washington, D.C. Oh, yeah, Mom, I'm going to take that call on. I'm going to take the torch. I'm going to go to Washington, D.C., and I'm going to make changes. I'm going to be a social justice warrior, just like you were. Yet I can't even answer a simple damn question about men competing against women in sports. What is it about these people, and what is it about their egos that needs this constant? It's like a saline drip for my ego. Oh, keep the bag flowing, baby. I don't feel good enough about myself.
So in Scott Brown's defense, when I talked to him, he just flat out told me, he goes, look, I'm just sick of us losing. I'm sick of us losing.
Then get out of the way and let somebody who actually has leadership skills step in. Because when you're running, we're going to lose.
Well, hold up, because I got to disagree with you here. Who was running for Senate? I didn't see anybody put their name up. When the calls started going out, hey, somebody.
You had Don Bolduc, right? What happened with Don Bolduc? You had a viable candidate there.
Don got destroyed.
Why?
Don got destroyed. He ran
Why and by who?
twice. All right, so he got sabotaged by the state party, sabotaged by the National Party. Not to mention, he got lambasted in the media. He put 4 years on the line after an entire lifetime of service, and he's still serving his community as a cop now. But he put his ass out there repeatedly, over and over and over again. And you know what? What did he end up getting for it? He got pushed into saying shit or taking a position that he didn't believe in order to get votes from the most extreme people, when Don was actually very pragmatic and reasonable. But we don't vote for pragmatic and reasonable. We vote for people who tap dance and play to our tune on the right and on the left. I'm not a Trump devotion syndrome guy, and I'm not a Trump derangement syndrome guy. I'm a call a spade a fucking spade guy. I'm sorry, dropped an F-bomb. That's my one for today. But I'm a call a spade guy. I ran for office. I will admit, I had the ego. You know why?
You and I were sitting. You and I were sitting in Florida. You and I were sitting in Florida, having a cigar together, when a group of, and I'm not going to mention the names, who they were, but a group of lawmakers from New Hampshire joined us, and one of the first things that one of them said was, well, Donald Bolduc just sank his campaign today. And that was the day that he did the, it was a press conference or what, but it was Jennifer Griffin from Fox News, the Pentagon reporter from Fox News, who had come out and brought light to the fact that there was, I think it was with
election integrity.
No, it wasn't that. It was the, I think it was the Ukraine conflict.
Oh, yeah. Don made a comment about the Ukraine, initially supporting the idea of funding the war in Ukraine.
Yeah. And so, and there's, and we could have an entire conversation about that. Where were his handlers? Because Don's not a politician.
No.
Don's not a politician. Don's a general who was a brigadier general in the Army, who was used to, I say what I mean what I say, here are the orders, go do them. He's not a polished and was not a polished presenter, and I don't fault him for that.
No.
I fault his handlers from that to say, hey, listen, you know what? Maybe this is how you need to word this. I'm not saying tell him what he needs to say, but you brought up a really good point, which was he was sabotaged by the National Party. He was sabotaged by the State Party. I remember this is the unity breakfast, and that's definitely going in underscored air fingers quotes, because there was nothing unifying about that. It was an absolute joke. It was watching Carolyn Levitt have her last name mangled by Steve Stepanek, who couldn't even do her the courtesy of pronouncing her name right. I think that was intentional. And then you also had Don Bolduc, who went up and tried to extend a gracious gesture to Chris Sununu and was snubbed. So, listen, we've said this many times before, that the Republican Party has the unique ability to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, and I don't believe that under current leadership or past leadership, as we've seen, we saw it happen with Wayne McDonald in 2018, and I think you're going to see it again under the piss-poor, absentee landlord leadership of the McKeeker-Novoletsky duo, which is, they're useless. They're useless. But then again, these people continue to put their faith and trust in people that let them go. How many times is your abusive alcoholic husband going to give you a black eye before you wake up and realize, holy shit, he's lying to me and he's no good, and we have to get rid of it?
By the way, once again, have no problem with any of these people. I keep good relationships with everybody. I like them all as people. I just disagree with them on strategy. And the lack of strategy.
I think a lot of them are scumbags personally, to be honest with you, and I have no problem saying that. And listen, I'm entitled to my opinion, you're entitled to my opinion, and they're entitled to be scumbags, but I am an equal opportunity excoriator.
Yeah.
You do a good job, I'm going to celebrate. Yeah. If you are a scumbag, I'm going to call you out. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
That's it. All right, going to take a very, very quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Michael O'Neill. We're going to be talking about presidential executive orders being undermined by activist judges in the federal court. Plus your phone calls and much, much more. Don't miss out. Come on back.
Not everyone can get up every day and look for ways to piss people off. But here at GraniteRock.com, we do that almost every day. I can't tell you how many times someone's lost their SHIT and threatened to end us. We're still here, pissing people off. It's almost like we enjoy it, and we've been doing it since 2006. That's almost 2 decades of news, politics, and opinion, and now podcasts, and we're just getting started. We believe in principles before parties and politicians. We defend free markets and individual liberty, and if that makes you mad, it makes us smile. We're like Grandma after she stopped caring what other people thought. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
United We Stand, A Marine's Fight. Written by Julian Aciard. I wrote this book to decipher through the tumultuous political dialogue and political gangbanging we see on both sides of the aisle between politicians, activists, influencers, and pundits, and get down to brass tacks solutions in order to save our republic. Again, United We Stand, A Marine's Fight, written by Julian Aciard. You can purchase the book on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes & Noble.
You know, it's funny, as I hear this piano music, I can just picture John Candy playing air piano on the dashboard of a car, all Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Ooh, good movie.
That's a great movie.
You know a movie I just watched with the kids this weekend? The Dragonheart series. We started off with Dennis Quaid and Sean Connery playing the voice of the dragon. With Sean Connery's voice, if I could pick 3 voices in all of Hollywood that I endlessly can listen to them speak, it's Sean Connery, Morgan Freeman, and James Earl Jones. Voices are absolutely iconic.
Yeah.
Any one of them could narrate my life, and I'd be perfectly happy.
Should throw John Lovitz in the mix there, because he's got a great, he's actually got a great voice.
I like
to be honest with
Denzel
you.
Washington too.
So
Denzel's got
you
that.
can't pick him out of a lineup though. If you're listening, if you're watching
no.
an animated show or something that has the voiceovers, the voice characters, you can definitely. I just, before we get into our guest here, the one thing is I did want to say this earlier. You want to watch a good movie. And, it's a kind of a blast from the past, but it definitely, if you've got it on VHS, blow the dust and the cobwebs off the VCR tapes, pull it out, and watch The Patriot.
Ooh,
because that, and you think about it. We think about the Revolutionary War, and I don't think that people really appreciate the Revolutionary War in the context of the way that it's portrayed. And it shows really just how tyrannical the British soldiers and the British armies were, and what they did, and how absolutely murderous they were. But it's a great movie, and I think that people really need to get in touch with the
I wish
spirit.
Mel Gibson would have made more movies about the Revolutionary War and got more graphic. I want to see it as graphic as, say, Passion of the Christ. Just it shakes your rib cage and it shakes your soul when you see it and you go, damn, is this what we're up against? Like, I want to see the Boston Massacre. I want to see.
Christine had actually
Battle of
asked me
Bunker
about
Hill.
that the other day. She said, have you ever seen Passion of the Christ? And I said, no. And she said, I just watched it. And she said, it's like, I had to turn it off.
I remember watching it in theaters. Everybody walked out of the theaters either in tears or they walked out silent.
Yeah.
There was no conversation. There was no nothing after that.
Objective met, right?
Yeah.
If Mel Gibson were going to make a video about the Los Angeles riots, what do you think? what do you think they would? It's like a combination of Braveheart and what I forgot what his character was in The Patriot. But I mean, imagine Braveheart and The Patriot, and now Los Angeles PD. This is kind of crazy. And I think the most interesting thing is that there's money. First of all, and I know that there's an audit coming, an investigation into where all this money is coming from. But I've heard a lot of the No Kings organization money came from the Walton family, which is kind of amazing. But where is this money coming from, and what are these organizations and what are these NGOs that were behind the riots? And not only just the riots in Los Angeles, because it was not solely in Los Angeles. This was around the country, and you were seeing and you were seeing a lot of these activities. And then, of course, we have the No Kings movement this past weekend, which I think a lot of people are talking about, saying that this was an absolute dud. And I think when you look at across the sea of people that were out there, I think one thing was noticeably lacking in a lot of these crowds.
Diversity?
Okay, so two things that were...
It was filled with awfuls, man.
It was filled...
We gotta say it. It was all awfuls. It was 60-year-old white women.
It was all like 50 and 60-year-old people that were in there. Is it possible that the Democrats are starting to lose their youthful base?
They are.
And I want to get our guest's perspective on this. Teddy Pierce, author of Dethrone Davos, writer, speaker, and political commentator, hell-bent on upending the globalist agenda. I like him already. Teddy, welcome to the program. Thanks for jumping on.
Hey, thank you for having me.
And I was kind of watching on the monitor there your smile as we were talking about that. That's the one thing that I notice when I look at these crowds of people. The first thing that I look for, because I don't look for race, but if people are talking about how diverse they are and how equitable they are and how inclusive they are, well, then I would expect to see a cross section of society in these rallies, but I'm seeing cut from the same mold. I describe them as awfuls, angry white female liberals. These are the 55 to 70-year-old, silver hair, generally short cropped, generally speaking, hyphenated last names, who tended to be social workers or teachers in their previous lives, who have now become social justice warriors, arguing for air fingers quotes rights of people that they would never want. If they would call the police if these people were standing in their front yard.
Which is exactly why I do look for the race representation, because I want to see how much of that supposed diverse coalition shows up for these different events.
Am I off base here, or is this accurate?
Yeah, I think it's totally accurate. Operation White Savior was in full force in LA this weekend.
I love it.
Hashtag that.
Yeah, Operation White. What was it? Operation White?
White Savior.
White Savior.
Ah, perfect. All right. Especially with this, were you expecting with this whole this No Kings movement here? Were you expecting more people and a younger crowd to show up?
It was interesting the way that it was corporate. It was obviously not a bunch of grassroots organizations and Antifa who purposely doesn't have social media presence. You go look at these No King protest website. It was obviously workshopped, and you saw a corporate planned element to it. And so I think that we got exactly what you could expect, which is the awful showing up, very typical leftist showing up. But I think more than anything, we obviously had a lot of violence in LA, and whatever you want to say about it, I think it's very indicative of the fact that we are dealing with a major shift. And, they've hidden behind this liberal veneer for so long, and now we're just saying the quiet part out loud. We're seeing the progressive left becoming the tail wagging the dog. And so, you look at what happened in LA over the last week and a half, and tell me if that political movement has any intention of living in peace with their fellow Americans and coming to the table to compromise.
So I do have one question, and that is, okay, so we're kind of teetering on the precipice of a very, very interesting period of time here. As these people die off because of old age, dementia, and multiple COVID jabs, what's going to happen when this generation now disappears? Are we going to be shifting, do you think, more towards a conservative basis once, again, these people are out of the voting pool? Or do you think it's going to remain relatively stable?
Well, the liberal world order that we've lived in over the past century is slowly breaking down, and it was never meant to be sustainable. You can't drive up this amount of debt. You can't embarrass America on the world stage in foreign policy over and over and over again and expect this to be a sustainable system. So you're exactly right. We're at this point in time. This is a planned point in time for the left, particularly again the Progressive Party. And what we're seeing right now is we're being driven to the edge. And so we are seeing a very large resurgence. You could call it conservative, but really what we're seeing is the younger generations pulling back from radical leftism. This idea, and I talk about it at length in the book, about relativism or just a denial of truth. And so you see the destruction, classic critical theory and Marxism happening in real time. And you're right, as that demographic fades away, the staunch liberals, that will vote blue no matter who, as they go away, you are going to see things and tensions escalate. But the whole point of the liberal institutionalization of power was to give that to this progressive Marxist movement as an inheritance. So they were going to adopt all of the institutional power of the government, and so public opinion be damned. They are here to take what they feel is rightfully theirs and to see the glorious revolution to the end. And they hope that institutional power is going to win the day in the end, and it won't matter what we think anyway.
So I think back when podcaster Joe Rogan went on to Spotify, and you had people like David Crosby and Joni Mitchell that were excoriating the decision, and these are the very people who were championing the no authority, question authority. We're never going to fall in lockstep with the man, and all of a sudden now these aged hippies have literally become foot soldiers, useful idiots for the progressive left, for the very thing that at least they claimed they stood in stark opposition and contrast to. So what is happening with these people?
Yeah, well, what really is happening is you're seeing the cultural shift, this paradigm shift happening in real time. I've said before that in the 1960s, during the Cultural Revolution, there wasn't a thing blasphemous enough that could be barred from a college campus, whether that was actions or words. And now there are safe spaces and free speech zones on campus. And so what we're really seeing is this abusive system that's hidden behind this veneer of benevolence for so long. We're seeing that come out into the fore and start to become the reality, and the quiet part out loud. And so you're exactly right. The people who ate granola and cared about their health were on the opposite side of the political spectrum just 40, 50 years ago. And so I think really what we're seeing, especially with the older generation, is an inability to see the fact that they are being useful idiots for a political movement that never had any of their ideas and values in mind. And I say this, when you're dealing with an abusive system or somebody who's willing to abuse you to get what they want, the point is never the point, right? All of the actions are very disparate and disconnected. They don't make sense until you realize that they are willing to do whatever it takes to keep you in that system of abuse and keep you trapped there. Yeah. And so that's really what we're seeing in real time is the evolution of this progressive party. They used to be the darlings of the media and on the fringes of the Democratic Party. We see them eating their own and coming to the fore and saying, rules be damned, truth be damned, right and wrong be damned. We are going to take over, and you are not going to be given a choice. And I think that that's just a reality that's too harsh for anybody who's voted Democrat because of Great Depression policies, because of post-World War II Reconstruction policies, or anything like that. It's just a pill too hard for them to swallow. And certainly, the orange man he's persona non grata. So whatever's on the other side, it's worse than anything that they can imagine their own party doing.
I think we're in this zone right now where you have this combination of the people who are going, don't tell me what to put in my body, don't tell me what I can drive, don't tell me what I can wear, don't tell me where I can take my guns, don't tell me what I can say, all coming together, and not necessarily conservatism as a whole, but this fed up with the constantly being lectured by a group of people inside the Beltway, this super elite academic sort of socialist Marxist ideology that is permeated throughout the left, where they've taken this conglomerate of different ideologies and different movements and different interests, and they put them all together, and the only thing holding them together right now is their hatred of Trump. And beyond Trump, they're all fracturing because as they've been a victim of their own success and they've gotten so close to accomplishing their ultimate goal of Marxist proletariat revolution in the United States, using sex, gender, religion, and all sorts of other things as vehicles towards their class warfare, they've gotten to this point where they can no longer hold that coalition together because they all have diverging interests in what is going to be the end goal.
Yeah, you're exactly right. For all of the arguments of fracturing on the right now, with Trump saying what he said about Tucker Carlson and all of the breakdown over the Iran-Israel conflict, there's certainly more of that on the political left right now. A lot of the minority groups are splitting over the modern gender ideology and things like that. I think really what we need to understand in true Sun Tzu fashion, art of war fashion, is to understand our enemy, because these disparate groups who feel like they're unified in the destruction of the country, they obviously have their own little realms of power that they're pulling for, and their interests, their converging interests. But what we really have is a globalist system. Right? If you disbelieve me on the globalist system, look at how foreign policy has slowly marched forward step by step over the last century, then regardless of whether that's what the Americans wanted or anybody else. And so you do have a central power structure to this. And they're the ones who have developed this corrupt system, and it incentivizes the corrupt and it gives them credence and power within that system. But we really are, don't let the fracturing of the left fool you in any way. That the people who have the power are using even the agitators on the left as useful idiots. There are people that are very, very powerful in the background that are selling us this narrative, this liberal ideology, this global foreign policy, and globalism broadly. They're selling it to us as the inevitable march of the future. But it's their story, it's their narrative. And that's something that we need to recognize, understand our enemy, as Sun Tzu would say, so that we can know what we're up against and we can be a counter revolutionary force against them.
To that degree, I wanted to propose this. Maybe I might be wrong in this. Part of knowing your enemy is also understanding that they will not only use the fracturing and the useful idiots on their side towards whatever ends that they can accomplish. And most conspiracies are a few people expecting the average person to act in what they believe is their own self-interest. That's how actual conspiracies operate. And that includes using the fracturing and the issues on the right to further their own goals as well. So within the fracturing on the right, you'll see them also try to amp up that fracturing in order to keep us from accomplishing our goals of swinging the pendulum back towards some semblance of normalcy as well.
Yes, of course. We've come to realize that what was the establishment Republican Party was controlled opposition in a lot of ways. They're the people, the Lindsey Grahams of the world who haven't found a Middle Eastern country they don't want to go bomb. And of course, you have the Mike Pences, and I hate to throw him under the bus because I'm sure he's a nice guy, just like Mitt Romney. But these people they were designed to lose with dignity. They were designed to be the opposition, so that when the left came up with their platform and said, we're going to destroy the country in 5 years, they're the ones who nobly fought against them and said, we negotiated them down to a 10-year plan instead of a 5-year plan. And so, the unforgivable sin, obviously, of the Republican Party was electing the bad orange man who did not represent those established powers. And that's really what we're starting to see, is the political fracturing that we're seeing. It does not fall along the red-blue corridor, as nice as it is to say, liberals, conservatives, progressives, nationalists, whatever labels. What we're really seeing, just exactly to your point, we're seeing people who are fed up with this system and saying enough is enough. And that to me is the new paradigm shift. It's we the people versus the establishment. And of course, the establishment is beholden to the globalist powers and that globalist narrative. And so that's really the new political divide, is the people who can see clearly and say, we've had enough. We want to have something that looks a lot more like the founders founded than what has body snatched our government over this last century. That's we the people. And we're going to stand up for America's interests. And you can call us nationalists or America first or whatever you want to call it, but it's we the people versus the establishment. And those people who benefit from the establishment are going to fight tooth and nail, regardless of what political side they're on, to preserve that power structure that they derive their power from.
Teddy Pierce, author of Dethrone Davos, Saving America, joins us on the video line tonight. You know, it was interesting during the era of the Biden auto pen administration. I think it's really what we could chalk it up to. So we had Antifa, we had BLM. Okay, now with this anti ICE protest that are going on, they're not protests, they're riots. So we have three major organizations. Antifa really is not playing. We're not really hearing a lot about that, and we're not hearing really anything about BLM because they were exposed as the fraud that I think people recognized that they were. But we have three organizations here: the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, Los Angeles; the Party for Socialism and Liberation, say no more there; and the the SEIU, the Service Employees International Union. And these are organizations that are, I mean, certainly SEIU, I mean, they just vacuum up money from their employees under the auspices of union dues. Anybody who is an organization or a member of that organization, I would as much as I possibly could opt out. I wouldn't give those people a dime. Interestingly enough, they were hiring for a political organizer down in Florida. I was tempted to throw my resume in, pose as a liberal, just lie my way through it just to get into an interview and record it. I thought that would be fascinating to do that.
You're too old, white, and heterosexual for that.
Oh, I can
do it.
I can grow my hair out. So
I could do it.
You know? I mean actually, you know what we could do is we could have Teddy, I hate to tell you this. I got to be honest with you. Does anybody ever told you that if you grew out your beard a little bit, you'd look like Alex Soros?
No, I haven't.
I don't. No offense, but I gotta be honest. My producer is like doing a palm face right now. He's like, I can't believe you said that. No offense, but I'm like, oh my goodness. Like if I put you next to Hillary Clinton or Chelsea Clinton, I couldn't tell Oh, and by the way, you know who just married him?
Oh.
Oh,
Huma Abedin.
yeah, Huma Abedin.
Huma Abedin.
Yes,
Boy,
I
talk
did see
about the
that.
coming together of some pretty powerful families there. But I mean, you know, the money that's going into these organizations, SEIU, and certainly the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, Los Angeles, these are NGOs that are receiving millions of dollars in tax money. So literally, our tax dollars are going to fund these organizations that are using bastardized versions or interpretations of the Constitution to engage in criminal lawlessness in major cities. Where do you see this going? And I mean, and we're not even in the summer yet of the first term or the first year of Trump's presidency. Where do you see 2025, 26, 27, 28? Where do you see things heading here?
Well, I just have to say, you know, the people who came to the aid of the Karens and the awfuls, you know, the Project White Savior, of course, we're an open borders organization, a bunch of commies and socialists, and of course, a union group. You know, so I'm glad that they're well represented by their fellow ilk. But yeah, this being the first summer and seeing this level of pushback, you know, I don't think that I'm a prophet or, you know, telling tales out of school to say this is just the appetizer. You know, this is just a precursor of what we can expect to come. And, you know, it's not crazy conspiracy theorists who said by the end of the decade, we would own nothing and be happy. You know, it's not crazy conspiracy theorists who are saying the Great Reset is going to come in 2030. That is this globalist contingency who said these things. Actually made a highly produced promotional video that came out in 2007 exactly to that point. And so this is a timeline that the higher ups in the globalist organization have set to really upend the world order. And you can imagine what would it take to get to that vision by 2030 where we're eating insect proteins instead of good, healthy food. And we're, as the joke says, living in the pod and eating the bugs. If that's their plan by the end of the decade, then this is small potatoes in comparison, I think. And so really, I think that Trump learned a lesson the first time from the lockdowns in 2020 and the rioting and the things that happened there. So I'm glad to see them push back. I do believe that he's going to continue to gain support for that. I hope that he continues to do so. But the legacy media has really lost the plot, and their reporting of this, and they're trying to sell a greater narrative than what they can get away with, is obviously diminished. And so that's a hopeful part of this. But ultimately, as we said before, you're dealing with a political ideology that has no intention of living in peace and coming to the table. And sadly, I think that this is just more of what we can expect to see moving forward.
To that degree of losing the plot, I think the biggest thing that we've seen on the left is they've lost control of the media narrative. The mainstream media is no longer the way the average person gets their news. And to even that degree, they've lost even their alternative media sources that used to be staunch supporters. I mean, Joe Rogan was a Bernie bro. Russell Brand was a Bernie bro. These guys are leaving the left in droves. Their biggest podcast, as a matter of fact, they're putting out ads begging anyone with any semblance of independence or rational thought or the ability to run a podcast and talk to normal people to please come back over to their side, because they just can't discourse with average human beings anymore. And thank God for decentralized media, because without it, we would be lost in a sauce right now.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, it's absolutely essential for shows like this and for alternative media space to exist, because we are turning the tide and making a huge impact. And the way that I describe it in my book is, if we are able to be that voice of reason, we will be able to pull ourselves and that great disaffected middle of people who just want government to function properly, and they don't want to be in the political sphere like we are, that those will be able to pull the nation back from the edge of the cliff as the left is driving off of it. And that really is, we cannot be underestimated enough. The entire purpose of what the left is doing right now is to destabilize the West, and America being the crown jewel of that, so that we are so over our skis in debt, and that we are so messed up and disoriented as a people that our hands are stretched out as far as they can in desperation to accept their solutions. And of course, those are going to be the solutions of the globalists, who want to create this soft coup, this slow takeover of every a facet of global economics, global politics, and global culture. And of course, they envision this mandatory United Nations, and they'll even manufacture a chaos like the Great Reset to achieve it. And what we're going to end up seeing is this soft coup, a mandatory United Nations, and of course, the rule by expert class over us, who just know better than we could ever come up with for ourselves on how to live our lives. And it'll just be absolute managerial control. That's why they're pushing for things like real ID. I know that's a topic for another day, but the central bank digital currencies. As you see these political movements from the left, you see two major things. You see social and cultural disillusionment. Transgenderism's chief among those is something that is just breaking the moral fabric and the fabric of mutual understanding in a high trust society. And so you see that on one side, and then the other side of that is their solutions, right? What they're going to bring to the table as far as legislation and solutions is obviously just going to be more control, more government in your life, and more of this rule by expert class of the coastal elite who, of course, live nothing like the lifestyle that they advocate for, that tears down society. But they're going to be the rule by expert class, and of course, they think they get to be the lords and ladies of America when the globalists come to claim what is theirs.
Teddy Pierce, author of Dethrone Davos, Save America, has joined us. Teddy, if people want to learn more about you and about your book as well, too, how can they find you?
The book is on Amazon. It's a Kindle and Audible, as well as paperback and hardcover. I'm on X at TeddyP1776, and then Substack by the same name, at TeddyP1776. All
right. Teddy, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to get you back on because there's a couple of things that you were wrapping up with there that I want to dive into a much larger format, deeper format. So we'll have you back on again soon.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, going to take a very quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about, and this is, I got my things out of order here. So now we're going to be talking about presidential executive orders being blocked consistently by federal activist judges. I think this is going to be, not only is this going to be the summer of love, but I think this is going to be the summer of lawfare. So we're going to have that conversation with Michael O'Neill when Granite Stay Live continues. Don't go away.
United We Stand, A Marine's Fight. Written by Julian Aceyard. I wrote this book to decipher through the tumultuous political dialogue and political gangbanging we see on both sides of the aisle between politicians, activists, influencers, and pundits, and get down to brass tacks solutions in order to save our republic. Again, United We Stand, A Marine's Fight, written by Julian Aceyard. You can purchase the book on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes & Noble.
Would you rather spend time with family and friends in the pool or at the barbecue rather than landscaping your yard? Well, Augusta Lawn Care is here to help you with all of your landscaping needs. Proudly serving southern New Hampshire, we handle everything. Weekly mowing, spring and fall cleanups, bush trimming, mulch installs, lawn treatments, aeration, dethatching, and even snow plowing and salting when the dreaded winter hits. Call Augusta Lawn Care today and let your yard be the best-looking yard on the block. Call 603-331-4768. Augusta Lawn Care, locally owned, professionally done. Call 603-331-4678 or visit us online at AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry. That's AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry.
Not everyone can get up every day and look for ways to piss people off. But here at GraniteRock.com, we do that almost every day. I can't tell you how many times someone's lost their SHIT and threatened to end us. But we're still here, pissing people off. It's almost like we enjoy it. And we've been doing it since 2006. That's almost 2 decades of news, politics, and opinion, and now podcasts, and we're just getting started. We believe in principles before parties and politicians. We defend free markets and individual liberty, and if that makes you mad, it makes us smile. We're like Grandma after she stopped caring what other people thought. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
This could be the moment we've been waiting for, the chance to feel alive.
Sometimes we forget we live in one of the most beautiful states in the country. This summer, vacation right here and discover your new.
This is where it all begins.
right, so I'm not going to lie. When I hear this, I picture you in a pair of plaid polyester pants racing towards a burnt pea soup green Chevy Nova, about to get into a high-speed chase with criminals through the back streets of San Francisco.
I'm okay with that, except for the Chevy Nova. It's got to be a Chevelle. It's got to be a Chevelle. Yeah. Yeah. Late 60s, early 70s Chevelle, maybe even an Impala. I mean, just for stereotypical sake.
A 6'4" Impala?
No.
Yeah, that's what I want. I want a 6'4" Impala.
I like the 67 to 70 Impala.
I had a friend that had a Chevelle, and he was like, "Man, listen to that engine." I got to be honest with you, the engine sounded like a kitchen stove rolling down a hill. It was nothing to be proud of.
I had a 1970 Buick LeSabre out in California, and it was that pea soup, metallic pea soup with 4 different shades of green inside, because I don't know what car designer back in the 70s thought that was a good idea. But hey, it's the 70s.
Yeah.
Shag carpet was big then too.
I don't know, the worst cultural period of the century. The 1970s.
Disco, women who didn't shave, afros, jerry curls, yeah.
But I have said many times before, if I could have one, if you would look at me and say, if you could be granted one wish, what would it be? What would you think that my one wish would be?
Get rid of all music 2000 and later.
No, nothing like that. I want to spend, if I could have one wish, it would be to go back in time and spend one night at Studio 54 during its heyday.
Ooh.
Just to see the people who were there, just to sit there and to be, just to see everything, I think would be fascinating.
I was about to say, that's a little bit too much cocaine for your liking.
Yeah, well, I mean, it doesn't mean I would be putting anything up my nose. It just means that I would be just,
laughing at everybody.
I think it would be fascinating, to be honest with you. I think it'd be pretty amazing. All right, so one of the things that we've talked about here many, many times since Trump has been in, it seems like the Pandora's box has been opened, and this is a concern. The Pandora's box has been opened because we've talked, and I've talked about on my own media. I mean, I did extensive series of conversations on this on WNTK and WUVR about the lawfare. And lawfare, it's a thing. All right, we understand that. It's weaponizing the power of the government and of law enforcement agencies to go after your political opponents. Mm-hmm. Now, we certainly saw that with we absolutely saw that with the Biden's auto pen administration. The full force. I mean, we saw that back in Obama days. Of course, the IRS being weaponized and Lois Lerner going after conservative groups. So the weaponization of various aspects of government.
Don't forget
to go after
locking
political
up reporters.
Locking up reporters. Certainly J6. I mean, so there's a history of this. Now, what's happening is that activist judges are continuing their efforts to block President Trump's executive orders. And so, they're challenging the limits and the power of the executive order and the executive power. And so, there's this, it's amazing how leftists and progressives will, excoriate the system of government that we have. I mean, you saw when during Trump's first administration that, we have to basically nullify the Supreme Court. There's two things. We either have to nullify it or we have to stack the bench so that way we have enough liberal judges to overpower the opinions of the conservative judges. But now it's okay, now we're going to try to use the Supreme Court and we're going to try to use these various branches of government to be able to try to override the executive orders because they believe that the executive branch is now running roughshod, that he's operating as a tyrant, that he's operating as a king. And my concern here is that Biden, and I've said this before, violated a standard principle, which was you don't go after the previous administration. Whatever they did, I mean, and nobody's operated to the point where they need to be criminally prosecuted. But Biden now violated that standing, time-honored, not codified rule, but it was a tradition that was upheld. Biden destroyed that. Now you've got Trump who's going in there and cleaning house. And to be honest, he is performing and abiding by the mandate that he was given by the majority of voters, both the Electoral College and the popular vote, who elected him as president. Now you have the activist judges who were appointed by Obama, who were appointed by Biden, that are now trying to stymie anything that the Trump administration is doing. And my concern is that it's not going to stop here. When Trump is out of office, whoever happens to be in, if God forbid it's a Democrat, we are going to wind up seeing massive prosecutions of every person in any key position of the Trump administration. And then we have entered the world and we have now crossed the threshold into the never ending and yet the nobody wins portion of politics, which is I got you last. And so to talk about that, I wanted to bring onto the program Michael O'Neill. He is the Vice President of Legal Affairs. And I apologize, Michael, because I did not have, and I'm looking over my show notes here, and I did not have our Landmark Legal Foundation. I apologize. Welcome to the program. I'm sorry I messed up your introduction. I promise the rest of the interview won't go like that. So thanks for joining us.
No need for big introductions. That's fine. Mike O'Neill from Landmark Legal Foundation. Good to be with you guys. Keith, you make so many great points in your introduction there. You almost don't know where to start. Let's start really with the lawfare. You were talking about lawfare. And you see that you pointed out that it started during the Obama administration, but it really took root in the Biden administration when you saw the Biden administration and the Democrats going after candidate and citizen Trump. So you saw the efforts to have Trump removed from the ballot in Oregon. I don't know if there was an effort in New Hampshire. Was there an effort in New Hampshire? I think there might have been. Yeah. There was an effort in Colorado. Remember the case that actually matriculated all the way up to the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court had to decide about presidential immunity and whether Donald Trump had engaged in an insurrection and was ineligible to serve, have his name appear on the ballot for the Republican nomination in the state of Colorado. So that really was where lawfare kind of germinated. And now it's taken a new format. We know at the end of the Biden administration that lots of NGOs were funded with taxpayer dollars. Remember, you have the incidents where you have the EPA funded billions and billions of dollars to NGOs. So what you have here is you have an organized structure, you have an organized effort to virtually block, via judicial mandate, any executive action that President Trump is going to take. And that could be in regards to in immigration enforcement of efforts under the Alien Enemies Act, efforts to even, you just saw this weekend, you saw on Friday evening, a judge in California blocked or issued a temporary restraining order to block President Trump's mobilization of the National Guard to provide security for the ICE agents who are trying to execute their duties. So you see this width and breadth of this lawfare that's being waged and being waged by powerful forces, Democrats, NGOs, left-wing legal groups, also blue states, and also being abetted by judges. And of course, we know there's about 675 district court judges in the country. A large proportion of them were appointed by Presidents Trump and by Presidents Biden and Obama, who are hostile to the implementation of his agenda. So you see this almost virtually every executive action is in some shape or form being challenged and being attempted to block. Sometimes they succeed, oftentimes they succeed, sometimes they don't succeed.
When you talk about lawfare, and we kind of, and I even said this, that we're looking at the inception of lawfare really starting with the Obama administration, moving on. But to be honest with you, lawfare has been around since 1871. That comes in the form of 42 U.S. Code Section 1983, the deprivation of constitutionally protected rights, and that was something that really wasn't taken advantage of until really the 1950s, when you saw the Warren Court. That was when you started to see a lot of socio-political activism, and that was coming largely directed at attempts by activist attorneys to bring about changes in the correctional system, in the criminal justice system. But now, when you look at the wording under 42 U.S.C. 1983, what you see is that it's any person, any resident or inhabitant. So it's the constitutional rights are not extended solely to citizens. It's also to inhabitants, which would also help to explain the wet foot, dry foot policy policy that we had when it came to Cuban and Haitian migrants. My concern as well, too, is that every single person who winds up in ICE custody or control, you're going to have an activist judges saying, "Oh, were they rough with you? Is there in any way, shape, or form where do you believe that they violated your constitutionally protected rights?" Awesome. So now we've got literally hundreds of thousands of individual 1983 suits that are flooding federal courts that are designed simply to clog the system up, overwhelm the system almost in a Cloward and Piven type of structure, and just collapse the entire thing under its own weight.
Yeah, and we know that district court judges, again, I said there's about 675. These are Article 3 federal district court judges that are appointed by the president and are confirmed by the Senate. They don't have jurisdiction to hear garden variety immigration INA cases, deportation cases. Those are immigration judges, administrative law judges who should be hearing that. And of course, we've talked about the only due process that's afforded is, number one, identifying you are who you're accused of. Am I Mike O'Neill? Yes, I am Mike O'Neill, confirming that. Am I here illegally? Yes, confirming that. Okay, that's your due process, subject to deportation proceedings. So, but as you said, Keith, there's an effort to clog up those 675 courts with so much business that there can only do so much business at any given time by alleging these civil rights violations that you're talking about, referencing under the 1983. Also, let me just add one other interesting nugget here. One interesting wrinkle is there's another statute that often is utilized in these cases, and that's the Administrative Procedure Act. And the Administrative Procedure Act allows private entities to allege that a government action by an agency, or they've actually extended it now to trying to say that the president, they're trying to rope in the president, these really creative, novel arguments, saying that any action unlawful can be enjoined, in other words, stopped by a district court judge. So you're using the Administrative Procedure Act to petition courts for all of these remedies that it was never intended or to award, and empowering judges, and judges kind of running roughshod with their power. Let me just give you an example here. The judge in California that we're talking about that issued a temporary restraining order prohibiting the president from mobilizing the National Guard is actually determining facts. Now, it's the president under the Title 10, which is the statute that provides gives the president the power to mobilize the National Guard, to provide security for federal law enforcement officers as they execute their duty, and that's what they're doing. It's the president's prerogative to determine whether those facts on the ground or necessitate the mobilization of the National Guard. It's not a judge's decision to determine whether those facts rise to the level justifying the president's action. But that's been cast aside. So you have district court judges deciding facts. Now, you guys know about who decides facts and who decides law in our adversarial system. Juries decide facts. Judges don't have this authority to, especially when the president's executing core Article 2 authority, i.e. enforcing immigration law. You don't have a judge who should be adjudicating facts on an expedited basis. And so you see this abuse of power by these activist judges really encapsulated in that Newsom versus Trump, where you see an order saying to the president, no, you can't mobilize the National Guard to provide security for your immigration officers who are unable to do their job absent that security. It really encapsulates the width and breadth of this activism.
So, one of the things that I've always said, and the problem with a lot of the Supreme Court rulings, I mean, we'll look at, say the Bruin decision, for instance, is that the Supreme Court, when it rules, there is no enforcement mechanism. I mean, it would be nice, Bruin decision, for instance, that court mechanism would be nice. Politics, and you have legislators that use a pen to draft legislation that will be enforced at the barrel of a gun. But Supreme Court rulings, there isn't an enforcement mechanism. So what's stopping Trump, and what would foreseeably be the consequences if Trump said, hey, you know what? Listen, I'm the president of the United States. I call the shots here. I am following the mandate of the American voters, and I don't really give a rat's ass what you say about the federalization of the National Guard. I'm going to do it. You guys, I am your commander in chief. Get out there. Now, we understand, we're not supposed to follow, we have a duty and a moral and a legal obligation to disobey an order that is unconstitutional. But we're not talking about people going out and opening fire on American citizens. We're talking about enforcing immigration law and federalizing these state standing armies to do the job that these derelict governors won't do themselves. And of course, I'm referring to Newsom.
Right, and okay, so there's a couple great points that should be addressed there. First of all, it's not unprecedented. I believe Andrew Jackson did it in the past, ignored some Supreme Court opinions. So you're right. The courts do not have any enforcement mechanism. They rely on the rule of law and the agreement that we have that we're going to defer to the interpretation of the Supreme Court as it interprets and adjudicates constitutional law issues. So they don't have any enforcement mechanism. To this point, Donald Trump and the administration have been complying with any effort, any order, legitimate, whether we want to deem it legitimate or not. The Trump administration has been complying with these orders. Even that order I just cited, it was immediately stayed by the Ninth Circuit, and then there's a stay on it. So even if the Ninth Circuit and then ultimately the Supreme Court comes down on the side of Gavin Newsom, which I don't think they're going to, but that will really be a test. But I think the danger you've really pointed out is the fact that the American people are quickly losing faith in the integrity of the judiciary. When you have the American people voting en masse, overwhelmingly, and again, nobody can dispute that one of the main platforms of Donald Trump's agenda when he was running for president was enforcement of the immigration, was addressing the immigration crisis facing our country. And for everyday Americans who see one or two activist judges essentially blocking his efforts to legally enforce those laws, it just doesn't compute. And so what they do is they increasingly ratchet up the pressure and frustration on the judicial system. So what you want to see is ultimately, you'd like to see me as an attorney and a practitioner in this area, I'd like to see the judiciary get its own house tomorrow. That starts with the Supreme Court. That starts with the Chief Justice of the United States and a majority of the Supreme Court reining in these judges. We do have a decision that's coming out in the next couple of weeks. It's in a decision in the birthright citizenship case regarding the power of these district court judges to issue universal injunctions. So hopefully, and with every fiber of my being, I want to see a strong opinion reining in federal judges and the power to issue universal injunctions. Now, what are we talking about when we mean a universal injunction? I mean a district court judge issuing an opinion, issuing an order that affects the entire nation. Now, our framers certainly never envisioned empowering an inferior court judge with the power to have a decision to enjoin to affect the entire country. So I want to see the Supreme Court do the right thing and start to rein in these federal district court judges. Absent that, of course, you have Congress with authority. Skeptical about whether there's a majority in both houses to do that. But again, we know that under our constitutional structure, these are inferior courts. Congress has jurisdiction to limit their authority, has authority to limit their jurisdiction. So there are some arrows in the quiver here to deal with this, but my concern is legitimate, and I share your concern that the American people ultimately lose faith in the judicial system.
Well, and one of the things with people losing faith in the judicial system, this is where you saw the progressives that were calling for the abolition of the Supreme Court. This is an antiquated system. So there's two ways. If you can't join them or overpower them by stacking the courts, this is where we want to dismantle it. But it really is akin to the 8-year-old who's losing at checkers, so he flips the board over and nobody gets to play. And this is basically the same thing. Whether it's the mobilization of the National Guard, government transparency is another issue. I'm just looking at some of these various cases. Actions against universities, transgender agenda, the DEI movement, the dismantling of health and human services. I mean, all of these things are being subject to, in their own respect, leftist warfare or leftist lawfare. Right. We're going to clog the system up. You're never going to get anything done because for the next 4 years, whatever you do is immediately going to be filed. We're going to litigate. We're going to file suit. We're going to tie it up in court. And, 4 years, all it's going to be is just a gigantic mess.
Right. And so what you need to see, there are, again, litigate these cases, get them off the dockets as quickly as you can. We know there's nothing in our system that prevents somebody from from filing a lawsuit. We're going to have to fight them one battle at a time, unfortunately. But absolutely, you've identified the strategy of the left in bogging down the implementation of the Trump agenda. Again, you saw at the waning days of the Biden administration, billions of dollars going out the door to NGOs, well-funded NGOs. You have well-funded leftist law firms, left-wing legal groups that are committed to hijacking the agenda. And we could talk about it. You know that they know what power do they have. They have a majority of these district court judges that are on their side that were appointed by Biden, were appointed by Obama, that are going to be amenable to their arguments. Ultimately, again, you have to have enough of these cases migrate up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, where we know that if generally given, push comes to shove, again, not all cases, but in a lot of cases, you need to get some strong victories in front of the Supreme Court that begin to get these district courts in line. And again, I think there might be something on the horizon in the next coming weeks that's going to rein in some of these judges. Again, not all the circuits are as bad as some of these district court judges. The Ninth Circuit is not as bad as they think. So I think there's some optimism regarding the National Guard utilization. But the bottom line is, groups like Landmark, other groups, obviously the Department of Justice have to fight these battles one at a time and defeat them one at a time. It's just the way it is from a legal standpoint.
I think what I'm worried about is you can only have the people of any country lose faith in its institutions and their ability to work the way they were designed to work before people start to take the law into their own hands. And once you get to that point, you spiral down. You're on an endless spiral towards utter chaos and anarchy. And we don't want to see that in the United States. We're supposed to be a nation of laws. And so far, our laws are being perverted. Our institutions are being perverted. This is one of the most dangerous things that I've seen with the march through the institutions on the left and the reticent nature of the right to do that same, to recreate that same march on our own side in order to correct the system. Our constant mantra is don't go to universities, don't go to law school, don't be a doctor, don't get into these organizations, take them over and get rid of them or dismantle them, but to go into the trades and leave these institutions left to the people who operate within the Beltway who think like this.
Yeah. You know, one of the concerns here, and I kind of set this up earlier, is not so much what's happening now, because, I mean, we understand, listen, the left is going to play their game, but it's more about what's going to happen after Trump is out of office. There is no third term. I think, you know, whatever teasings that Trump puts out there is simply just to get a rise out of people. He's a master at that. He likes to throw out these hypotheticals and just watch the left go absolutely apoplectic. But that being said, think back to during the first Obama administration, when you had the Pelosi, Reid, and Obama trifecta. And you had, I remember Code Pink was standing up screaming, "You have the power, take it." And, you know, Obama was not a revolutionary radical. He was a legislative radical. No question about it, radical, but he was not a revolutionary. He chose his actions of revolution, Marxist revolution, in the form of legislative action and the pen. What happens if we wind up with another Democrat trifecta in Washington, D.C.? Is what we saw previously under the Biden administration, is this going to be an all-out attempt to squash anything that has to do with the Republican Party, anything that has to do with the conservative movement? Because I think the lawfare it is what it is right now, and they're not in the majority. Imagine if they were in the majority, what would happen?
Right, you can't put that horse, and that's the danger here. And the things I think about it, the politicization of the impeachment process, for example. Remember, you guys are probably old enough to remember the Clinton impeachment back in 1998.
Absolutely.
It was a big deal, right? I mean, it was a big deal, and now impeachment is just we've got young folks in my office in their 20s. And they just kind of shrug their shoulders at an impeachment because they weaponized and abused the impeachment process with Donald Trump back in his first term. So really, and we know, what do we know, guys? If the Democrats take control of the House of Representatives, immediately there's going to be an impeachment of Donald Trump for some trumped up concocted charges. So the damage that is being done to the institutions, the foundational damage is incalculable by the left. Again, they continue to cross red line after red line after red line. And the only thing, really, honestly, the only thing standing between them and tyranny is the American people. And again, we saw overwhelming votes for Donald Trump in 2020 in November. So the political process worked in that capacity. It didn't work in 2020. That's a whole other conversation we could get into. Yeah. But it worked in 2024, and the best guard against the imposition of that tyrannical regime you just posited is through the political process, is just continue to win elections. And I know the stakes are high, but that's what we all talk about.
Yeah, indeed. I would encourage people to check out Landmark Legal's website at landmarklegal.org. That's landmarklegal.org. When you're on the website, check out current issues. That's where, and again, I touched on a lot of these. Not only the National Guard issue, but the actions against some of the universities, the transgender DEI, HHS dismantling, government transparency. These are all topics that you guys have your finger on the pulse. You're involved. A lot of amicus briefs, so on and so forth. So again, I would encourage people to check out the current issues and find out the good work that Landmark Legal is doing. Michael O'Neill, Vice President for Legal Affairs, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the program tonight. Great perspective. I have to say, I'm walking away from the conversation with a slight degree of hope that maybe things are, maybe going to work themselves out. But I don't trust the progressives with
guarded
anything.
Skepticism, gentlemen. Guarded skepticism.
And hey, it makes for good broadcast media, right? I mean, that's what we do here. Again, thank you so much for jumping on with us this evening. God bless, stay safe, and we'll get you back on again soon.
Take care.
All right, thank you. All right, much more of Granite State Live right after this break. We're going to be talking about, one of the things that we're trying to curb, the illegal immigration aspect, and I've seen this firsthand on the southern border, and that is the importation of illegal drugs, specifically fentanyl, being manufactured in China, being imported into Mexico, and being trafficked into the United States. If you don't like America and you're the Chinese Communist Party, well, there's an easy way to get rid of your adversary. That's get them all hooked up on smack and kill them all off with fentanyl. We're going to be talking with J.C. Shepard. He is the founder of a fentanyl test. This is something that you've seen prescription drugs tainted with fentanyl, candy and different food items being tainted with fentanyl. So this is a test. If you're concerned about things like that, you can use this fentanyl test. It is an FDA cleared dip card. So we're going to talk to him about his product and specifically what it's designed to do, and also the state of affairs right now. Fentanyl being the number one killer in the United States of adults between 18 and 49 years of age. There it is. It's not cancer. It's not medical malpractice. It's fentanyl. We're going to have that conversation with Granite State Live continues. Don't go away.
If you love camping, but don't love sleeping on the ground, then you might be interested in staying in our Bear Hill cabins. Here, deep in the middle of a state park forest, you can be fully immersed in nature, while having the comforts of a furnished cabin to spend your nights. The Bear Hill cabins are located within Bear Brook State Park in Allenstown, New Hampshire, roughly 5 miles away from the main campground. There are currently 8 cabins available for reservation, each of which sleeps between 4 and 6 people. Inside each cabin, you'll find bunk beds, futon pillow couch, and a table and chairs. Clear vinyl windows can be opened or closed from the outside, and a fire ring and picnic table are just a few steps away from the front porch. A single, family-style bathhouse is the only facility available, along with a few additional porta potties. Bear Hill Pond is just a short distance from the cabins and can be used for boating or fishing. There is a small beach area which you can walk or drive to for launching a boat or wading into the water. In the years to come, New Hampshire State Parks will continue to expand the number of cabins being offered at Bear Hill. During the fall and spring months, these cabins are especially appealing since temperatures fluctuate so drastically in the evenings. Families may also find this setup quite convenient since it doesn't involve wrestling with an oversized tent and lugging additional gear. This may result in more quality time that you can spend together around the campfire. To make a reservation, visit nhstateparks.org.
Not everyone can get up every day and look for ways to piss people off. But here at GraniteRock.com, we do that almost every day. I can't tell you how many times someone's lost their SHIT and threatened to end us. But we're still here, pissing people off. It's almost like we enjoy it. And we've been doing it since 2006. That's almost 2 decades of news, politics, and opinion, and now podcasts, and we're just getting started. We believe in principles before parties and politicians. We defend free markets and individual liberty, and if that makes you mad, it makes us smile. We're like Grandma after she stopped caring what other people thought. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
Would you rather spend time with family and friends in the pool or at the barbecue rather than landscaping your yard? Well, Augusta Lawn Care is here to help you with all of your landscaping needs. Proudly serving southern New Hampshire, we handle everything. Weekly mowing, spring and fall cleanups, bush trimming, mulch installs, lawn treatments, aeration, dethatching, and even snow plowing and salting when the dreaded winter hits. Call Augusta Lawn Care today and let your yard be the best looking yard on the block. Call 603-331-4768. Augusta Lawn Care, locally owned, professionally done. Call 603-331-4678 or visit us online at AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry. That's AugustaLawnCareServices.com/Londonderry. Welcome back to Granite State Live on this Tuesday evening, the 17th day of June. Great to have you along. 833-603-8255 if you'd like to be a part of tonight's program. Again, makes that nice and easy for you. 833-603-8255. So, big story that came out yesterday here in New Hampshire. The state signing on to a $7.4 billion, with a B, dollar settlement with Purdue Pharma over the opioid crisis. And one of the things I have to say, I'm not a binge TV watcher. I don't really like watching TV, but I do have to say one of the best drama terries, I guess you can call it, it's like a drama documentary, was a show on Hulu called Dope Sick. Michael Keaton was in that. It was a dramatization of a story. I think it was West Virginia, I think, of a small community that was impacted by the opioid crisis. And when I first moved to New Hampshire in 2015, started out on WNTK and WUVR, and that was the big topic. I mean, everybody, especially in the 2016 presidential election, I remember sitting down with who's the Hewlett-Packard CEO, ran for president. I'm going to draw a blank. But anyway, her daughter had died of an opioid overdose. And I remember I did the first interview with her after she went public about that. The media would never talk about that until, she brought it up. She was actually doing a town hall in New London. And then she was scheduled to be with me the next morning. So since she had brought it up, we had a conversation about that. That was the big topic back then, the presidential election in 2016. Donald Trump talking about opioids coming in, not only legal opioids in the form of OxyContin and all of these opiate derivatives, but also certainly the fentanyl and the drugs that are coming across the southern border. Of course, the Golden Triangle used to be the source of all of this, but now a lot of this stuff is coming out of China, and of course the synthetic drugs are being manufactured both in China and in Mexico, and then being trafficked here into the United States. And so, just going through a couple of things here. Fentanyl is now evidently, and I didn't know this, but evidently it is now the number one killer of United States 18 to 49 aged adults.
I believe it.
Kind of interesting. And one of the things, too, now is that the fentanyl, I never really understood this, because if I'm a drug dealer, I want people to buy my products. I don't want to kill my customers. But that's one of the things that happens here. So you have a lot of counterfeit drugs that are being made, again, being manufactured in China, being manufactured in Mexico, and then being trafficked into the United States. And a lot of the party drugs that are out there, the the ecstasy, the Molly, and then even counterfeit prescription drugs like Adderall and the ADHD medications that are being abused primarily by college kids. And so a lot of these are actually they're not legitimate pharmaceuticals, and they contain fentanyl. And so now somebody takes this, they don't realize what it is, and they wind up succumbing to a fentanyl overdose. And maybe even the Narcan isn't going to pull them back from the brink of extinction.
Well, that's because fentanyl was being used as a cutting agent with a lot of these drugs, so you could water down your pure stash so much, and you could increase the potency with fentanyl. And what it ended up happening is the downside is if you don't have the chemistry exactly right, you don't just increase the potency, you increase the death rate. And we're finding that overwhelmingly with anybody who even comes in contact with fentanyl, you have a good chance of dying. And to a degree, at the time, good example, George Floyd had so much fentanyl in his system that he was likely going to die. And it wasn't that
he wasn't likely going to die. He was dead. He was dead. He just didn't know it yet.
And that's not something that's out of the pair of reality for the vast majority of people who come in contact with it. Especially if you think you're using something else and you find, and then because he was using meth, but it was laced with fentanyl. Because they found methamphetamines and fentanyl in the system. So he used meth, and then the fentanyl was what was killing him.
I'm going to stick to my I'm going to stick to my iced coffee, my caffeine, and that's about it.
I got a Zen pouch, and I got my caffeine. I'm going to stick right there.
So I wanted to get the perspective on this because this is interesting, and I think a lot of presumptive tests. Of course, in law enforcement, there are the presumptive tests, the little ampules. You put whatever substance is in the little bag, you break the ampule up, you shake it up, and in the case of cocaine, I know the presumptive field tests, they turn blue if it's contains cocaine or cocaine alkaloid, things like that. I know that there have been a couple of marijuana tests and things like that, wipes where if you think your kid's doing bong hits in his bedroom, because of course if you can't smell it, I don't know what the hell's going on there. But you take you can take the wipe and you can and then if it'll turn purple if it comes in contact with residue and things like that. But this is an interesting development here. The fentanyl test. It's an FDA cleared, and I'm not sure what CLIA is, but it's a dip card for over-the-counter use, and it's designed to test for the presence of fentanyl. So joining me is the founder of the fentanyl test, J.C. Shepard. J.C., welcome to the program. Thanks so much for having the time to join us tonight, or making the time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us about this. And by the way, people can check it out at thefentanyltest.com. That's thefentanyltest.com. But tell us a little bit more about this and what was the motivation behind developing this product?
Absolutely. So I come from a non-clinical background, although I guess I'm kind of a tech geek, if you will. I've started multiple businesses in the past and present. But, my motivation to start this, gentleman, was I worked in healthcare IT. Now, I was a business analyst where we would basically set up all testing protocols. We would set up the IT systems. We would have to train any type of coding updates that we made to our system where we centralized all medical records. And you had basically it's your CRM from patient intake coordinators all the way up to specialists and surgeons to have all their notes, prescriptions, and such. So anytime that we made changes to the system, I would go and train the staff on such. And a lot of the times I ended up being in the emergency rooms. And pretty much every single time in that emergency room, I saw a person die due to acute fentanyl toxicity. And I've seen pretty much every single person under the age of 25, at least 75 to 80% of them being admitted was due to acute fentanyl toxicity, and most of them didn't make it. So that's how we came up with the idea to change the outcome and just the whole mindset of test users like this and what tests can actually do.
Now, I know one of the things that's been concerned in law enforcement, and there's been a couple of situations here in New Hampshire where local police officers, in the course of conducting a traffic stop, they have probable cause, they do a vehicle search, they come in contact with an unknown substance, they start to display certain symptoms, and of course, there's the automatic assumption, I think justifiably so, we're going to assume that this is a very harmful subject or substance. So, there was the conversation about fentanyl, which is definitely strong. You have carfentanil, which is about 100 times. But now there are additional analogs besides just fentanyl and carfentanil. Tell me a little bit more about those and where do you tend to see those analogs on the streets?
Well, so it's interesting that you bring that up. One of the newest threats, even though it's been around since 1956, is something called nitazines, and this is a synthetic opioid that is up to 40 times stronger than fentanyl. I mean, essentially, you're getting to the level where Narcan is not going to work on you anymore when you have carfentanil and you have nitazines. And obviously, we're seeing most of everything now, especially through the DEA. They're saying up to 58% of what they find now has xylazine in it as well. Now, xylazine being present in any type of fentanyl cut agent or any type of drug that's laced with this, if you have that anesthesia and the tranquilizer aspect, Narcan's not going to work on you. So we're seeing, much more prevalence of death, even when people are trying to be safer. So, but nitazines are the new emerging threat. From my understanding, there's only 3 tests in the world that actually test for this. Ours tests of 50 nanograms per milliliter, which is the lowest on Earth. Our competitor tests of 2,000 nanograms. I mean, to be honest with you, that's enough to kill probably 50 people if you don't do it correctly. But I know you mentioned CLIA earlier. So we have 2 different types of tests. We have urine testing and we have substance and surface testing. Now, the CLIA waiver that you brought up, and we're actually giving away 50,000 free tests right now, urine tests for over the counter. They come with a lab backup as well. They're a $40 value. So if anybody wants to go get one to test their family member, test their children, they can go to thefentanyltest.com, click on the OTC product, and at checkout, just enter free help as a coupon, and you'll get 100% off that. But that's the first FDA cleared urine dip card. CLIA waived means that it's easy enough for anybody to administer this, and there's no need to have any type of skill or training. So these are designed for probation and parole officers and corrections officers, because until our test, they were not testing for fentanyl because those lab costs are generally between $350 to $700, and they wouldn't pass it on to the taxpayer unless there's extreme suspicion. And what you find and what you see in the media, gentlemen, is, right now they reported 79,000 deaths in 2024. That number is extremely light because, let's be honest here, they're not autopsying homeless people. Homeless people are, every single day we're losing hundreds of them to, fentanyl and other substances. But, we designed these for probation and parolees because when they're on this, they know that they're not going to get tested for fentanyl. So if they have an opioid addiction, they'll just transfer it right over and they'll try to beat the system that way. They can't do that anymore. Our tests are under $15 for the government, and that includes the lab certification through Salient Labs in North Carolina. And we not only save lives, we save people, tons and tons of money with the government. But on that side of things, what you see again is reported as 80,000 people 2024 have died. I'd say 85% of them were actually poisonings. Not many people outside of Kensington, Philadelphia, some parts in Baltimore, Los Angeles, San Francisco. I mean, every place has its I guess you'll call it a skid row. Mm-hmm. But unless you're at the very end stages of addiction, or, you can't feel heroin anymore, you can't feel anything anymore, you're not really seeking out to use fentanyl because people do want to hold on to their life. So, you don't see an 8-year-old junkie, so to speak, because I hate that term, but it's used so often. We just had an 11-year-old die. It's probably the first time they try something, so you can't call that an overdose. You call that an accidental poisoning because they don't know it's there. But the harm reduction tests that we have completely changed the game. They're the first to go to 1 nanogram. That's the only non-lethal cutoff in the world. They test any surface, any substance, including liquids, and you do not need to dilute this substance in any way. And what that means is, every other test, a drug user needs to take this substance. They need to they're supposed to put at least 2 milligrams of it in each time they use this. But if you don't do this, there's something called the chocolate chip cookie effect, that if you miss just, in some instances, the lowest I've seen on an autopsy and toxicology report is 3 nanograms take a life. George Floyd had 11 nanograms, but he had polysubstance use, so more than enough to take his life. But again, these drug users, I mean, who's going to go buy cocaine? Who's going to go buy heroin? Who's going to go buy methamphetamine and throw it all in water to test it for fentanyl? That's why you're not seeing too much of a decrease in deaths.
Yeah.
That's why they haven't made any real progress in the last decade. And ours require no dilution. They go to 1 nanogram, and we have multi-panels for nitazines, xylazine. We added benzodiazepines to it because we're seeing a lot of things being cut with Xanax and other things that also do not respond to Narcan. So we have a grade 4 panel that's high lethality, and the DEA actually bought those.
One of the things, and I recall, going back into my early media days, every once in a while we would get a notification that would come across that would be part of a newscast. Local authorities are warning people, if you are a drug user, to avoid the Lucky 7 brand of heroin because of a string of deaths. And they've actually stopped doing that over the past, I would say, probably 10 years. They've stopped doing that because now, instead of people saying, all right, well, maybe I shouldn't take that stuff, now they're chasing it. It's like if you were to put it out saying, oh my God, people are dying because of this Lucky 7 brand of heroin, which actually was a brand of heroin out of Massachusetts, that they're actually going to be chasing that because they're chasing the high. And more to the point, if you go onto and would encourage people to do this just so that way they understand the scope of this, and really just how twisted, this subsector of society happens to be. I got Narcaned the other night. How long do I have to wait before I can shoot up again? And the Narcan is going to negate the effect of my high. So, people, you're absolutely right. People aren't going to be testing this to verify that they're not going to die. More to the fact, they're looking for the most potent thing that's going to get them right to the point of pretty much death. And then they're hoping that somebody's going to narc them back into reality. And then they're going to go out and do the exact same thing all over again.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's it, and I'm glad they stopped doing this because that's the true addict right there. They will chase that high, and most of the time they're not going to come back to it. And I think Julian said it really best. He said this is very dangerous. I mean, you are going to die. I mean, I right now, 7 out of 10 pills that you would get illegally. We're talking, kids they're thinking it's an Adderall. They're thinking it's and that's big in college, of course. But they're thinking it's a Xanax, they're thinking it's an oxycodone, something of that nature. They're probably not going to make it if there's fentanyl in their pill. I mean, as he said earlier, these aren't chemists that are putting this together. And I know you make a really great point that, drug dealers don't want to kill their customers because now people are actually getting life sentences and death penalty for, trafficking drugs and dealing drugs that take a life. But the old adage is, don't get high on your own supply, of course, but also, don't kill your customer. Mm-hmm. And at this point in time, fentanyl is just too easy to produce. It's extremely addictive to where your customer is going to keep coming back. And to be honest with you, if they don't, you might not even have any cocaine in your substance at all. And they're thinking they're using cocaine, but they keep coming back for that fentanyl that's costing you $3 to make that you're selling for $300. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the reasons why they're doing this. But I'll tell you something interesting about that, guys, is, I never thought that our test would be used in a post-mortem manner. But we were working with Texas, actually, and Larry Smith, the head of the Texas Sheriff's Association, he came up with the idea to use these post-mortem, our urine FDA-cleared urine dip cards, because it's taking up to 3 months to get toxicology reports back. Medical examiners are backed up, or let's just be honest, they don't care too much about, again, the junkie. But even though it's a crime and it's a murder. So they're now utilizing our urine dip cards to extract urine, obviously, from, an unfortunate victim, and then get within 3 to 5 minutes our test results. They can also send it off for lab results if they need such. But then they don't have to wait 3 months for that warrant, and those people didn't jump across the border to not be prosecuted.
Mm-hmm. And I think the nuance here that a lot of people miss is at the macro drug industry, the macro underground drug industry, you do have actual chemists that are running and making all of this, and they're getting their supply perfect just to that niche where you have this high level of potency, but you're not going to kill off your clientele. And a lot of this fentanyl and the xylazine and what was the other one? Nicotine, or I'm sorry, nitazines. They're being cut in at the street level. So these are guys at the street level who want to up their portion of the profit by cutting the stuff that they normally. And that's the type of stuff that used to get you killed by the big macro drug dealers at the high level, or they would kill you because now you're polluting their supply with their name on it, and it creates, which goes into the violence aspect of the drug war and a lot of stuff we see on the streets of LA, New York, so on and so forth. But when it comes to this stuff is being cut at the street level, and it's getting drastic, which is why it's getting drastically more dangerous. And we're seeing such high levels in so many drugs across the country and local communities, so on and so forth.
I just had just a real quick question here. I had a viewer, Sharon in Newington, wanted me to ask regarding the poisonings. Is this something that we're seeing only in counterfeit prescription drugs, or are there other suspect sources or products that we would need to be concerned about, especially as parents? How would you address that?
So, to be quite honest with you, this comes from the DEA. Derek Maltz is one of the greatest minds on fentanyl. He's obviously a person that's traveled without pay to go and teach people after he was retired from the DEA. And if you recall, obviously, he just stepped down as acting DEA director that he did for Trump as a favor. But I'm hearing that realistically, you have to think that every single street drug you're getting has fentanyl in it now. I mean, that's just the real answer that they give you. I mean, to me, if you're using a street drug, it's going to be 50-50 if you live. And I'm not even making that, to scare people. It's just how I feel. I mean, I go to DC so often, and I ended up with the worst headache. I pulled off trying to find a place to get some Tylenol. I stopped at a Subway to ask them if there was anything around. They said, no, there's nothing for about 20 to 30 miles, but I'll give you a Tylenol. You wouldn't even take that Tylenol from the person. I mean, that's how serious this is. You never know what someone's going to give you. We are finding that there's some synthetic vapes now that kids are getting that are containing these. They'll disguise this in candy. Any way they can get it across the border. They will also send the chemical compounds in liquid form, disguise them as water bottles. So, water in a bottle and such. So, you got to be extremely careful with everything that you have. I would never take a drug that's not from a pharmacist that you know. I mean, to be quite honest with you, it could be your aunt, uncle, your grandmother, anybody, your sister that's giving you something that isn't prescribed to you. I would not even take it. You just never know.
And the most popular drugs with kids these days in high school, and as anybody, which is why I'm so apoplectic when it comes to the war on drugs and drug enforcement, because you can walk in any high school in the country and you can find any drug that you want. But the most popular drugs that you're going to find for kids using these days is weed, cocaine, MDMA, Molly, and some form of ecstasy. Those are your big four. And now with the vapes becoming the new delivery system, everything is being turned into some sort of vaporized substance so that you can be able to have it, and people just don't look at you. They look at you like you're just vaping. Like you see a teenager with a vape and you're like, whatever, it's a teenager with a vape. It's almost like back in the day when you used to sneak in a girl's bathroom to go smoke cigarettes or smoke cigarettes in a locker room.
And gentlemen, just it was yesterday, the day before. So we have an office in a warehouse in Pennsylvania, which right on the border, obviously, is Ohio. And an officer, routine traffic stop yesterday, breathed in just a little bit of fentanyl, had to be Narcan. So this is how little it just costs to get in your system here. And what really scares me to death is and this comes from the DEA too, estimated of 20 to 30 times over to kill every single American. That's how much fentanyl is already here. Now, if you get people that extremely hate America, which we know they certainly exist, Times Square on December 31st, New Year's Eve, you get a bag of flour, 5 pounds of this stuff, and you just blow it out in the air, you can have mass casualties. So this is what has been happening with the open border for this long. They have no idea how much came across. When the tariffs, were Canada and obviously Mexico, but CNN came up with a funny thing that, we only caught 19 kilos of this at the border. 19 kilos is enough to kill 10 million people, and that's just that's in pure substance form. That's not with being mixed in polysubstance. So, it's just so scary that these people just don't care. I mean, you're out here seeing the No Kings movement literally harboring fentanyl traffickers and people that want to murder Americans. So, the whole attitude has to change, but we do have, in my opinion, the right people. And hopefully Sarah Carter, who was, my friend, and she was with Border 911 doing the same thing with Derek Maltz and Tom Homan, traveling the country, talking about the border and fentanyl. I pray that she is confirmed because her heart is going to change a lot.
Yeah. Unfortunately, JC, that is all the time that we have, so we do have to cut it short. JC Shepard, founder of the Fentanyl Test. You can check out that website at thefentanyltest.com. That's thefentanyltest.com. And the promo code, if people want to do that, 100%. It's a free test.
Free urine test. It's just at checkout, just enter free help.
Free help, and that's 100% free. You can put your order in. JC, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Certainly appreciate it. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate it.
And that is going to do it for this Tuesday night edition of Granite State Live. I want to thank all of our guests tonight, Teddy Pierce, Michael O'Neill from Landmark Legal Foundation, and J.C. Shepard as well. That is going to do it. We are going to be back next week to do it all over again. Until then, keep those comments coming in because we certainly do appreciate reading those emails. GraniteStateLive@gmail.com. That's GraniteStateLive@gmail.com. Yeah, the rioting has kind of calmed down, but that doesn't mean you can let your guard down. Keep your head on a swivel. Stay safe. And remember, be nice to one another. Civility does work. Have a great week.